US. So without further ado, I'll introduce David Spencer, and I'll let him take it from there.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you hear me and see me? In the chat box, just tell me if you can hear me now. It would be nice to know. Okay, now. Thank you, Jana. You can hear me? Yes, Manuela, thank you. Excellent. I'm going to begin. Excellent. Great. Thanks to everybody for coming this afternoon. Buenasera. I am speaking to you from just outside Madrid in Spain. And of course, Spain and Italy are like cousins, I think. By the way, of course, I've traveled, I think, to Italy at least 6, possibly 7 times to give talks. And I've traveled around the country, and obviously one of my favorite countries. In fact, the sad truth is that I was about to travel to Italy just when the pandemic began, okay? So that was a very sad moment, that I was about to travel to 5 wonderful cities in Italy, and unfortunately that didn't happen. But life continues, and in fact, last year also I gave, I think, a couple of webinars, especially for Italy. It's a real pleasure to be with you. Thank you for giving some of your free time to watching me today. We're going to talk, and I wonder if we can share my slides. Yes, exactly. Perfect. That's brilliant. We're going to talk today about a gateway to a whole new world, okay? And I want to explain very clearly from the beginning what are my aims, okay? And I think this is useful in your classes too, right? When you give a class, I think it's a good idea to give an idea to your students. What are your main aims in your class? And I've got 2-3 main aims for you today. I am obviously an author. I write books. I've written many books which have been available in Italy. But apart from writing books, I am still in the classroom. And I think that when we're in the classroom, we are very focused on our activities, on the day-to-day, what's happening, what problems we have, what we need to do, what activities we're going to do. Today, my talk will be a little bit different. It will be taking a step back from the day-to-day teaching of teenagers, and I want to have a look at the bigger picture. Think about more things that we're doing in general. And my second aim is this idea of thinking about what has changed in the teaching of teens in the last few years. What are the current approaches to teaching teenagers, and why? Why have we changed the way that we teach our teenagers? And my third aim today is to give you some practical examples. How can we bring about these changes in the classroom? And to do that, I'm going to show examples from my latest course, the latest edition of Gateway, which is Gateway to the World. So I thought I would begin by introducing the idea of trending topics. So what things are new in the teaching of teenagers in comparison with maybe, for example, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or even longer if you are like me and an older teacher of teenagers. And I think one of the biggest changes in teaching teenagers over the last years has been the influence and the emphasis on real world content. And I thought today that it would be nice to begin with a little bit of a type of a quiz that you can answer in the chat box. I've got 3 questions for you, and I'll give you the answers afterwards. But can you tell me which of these 2 dinosaurs do you think really existed? A, the Gasosaurus, or B, the Pentadontosaurus? Do you want to have a guess there? Or maybe you think they both existed, or maybe you think that neither of them existed. But can you have a guess in the chat box? Just put which one really existed, A or B? Gianninotto says B. Thank you for answering so quickly. B, B. Gisela, Caterina, Emanuela. Barbara says neither of them. That's an interesting answer. Pierre Paolo says he doesn't know. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you the answer in 2 minutes, okay? Next, I have another question for you. My next question is, which Egyptian pharaoh really existed? A, Pharaoh Dinkum, or B, Pharaoh Neferefre? And I don't want any cheating by using Google. No cheating, okay? So can you write now 2A or 2B? Which one really existed? 2A or 2B? Or again, maybe neither of them. B. Thank you, Maria Rosa, for answering so quickly. B really existed, okay? And Pharaoh Dinkum didn't exist. Okay. Lavinia thinks the opposite. Lavinia and Lucia think that A existed. Okay, and my last question, and don't worry, I'm going to tell you the answers in a second. Is mosquitosis, and again, no Googling, is mosquitosis a real illness? Yes or no? Can you put 3A or 3B? What do you reckon? Patricia says Neferefre was the real pharaoh. What about question 3? 3A or 3B? So Carmela says yes, but Lisa says no. Okay, Alessandra says no. Okay, right now, I'm going to tell you the answers right now, okay? This is interesting. Your answers are very interesting. Now, I began to write my very first book, which I have here, okay? It was called Teamwork. And I began to write it exactly 30 years ago. And I'm still very proud of this book, but I am going to confess one thing maybe that I think is not so good in it. This is a page from a unit which is about dinosaurs. And it's probably a little bit difficult for you to read, okay? But don't worry. The idea of the lesson was to invent dinosaur names. And it was an idea like connected with the idea of word formation. For example, a real dinosaur, the Allosaurus. And Allosaurus comes from the Greek and it means unusual lizard. And in fact, if you remember my question about the Pentadontosaurus, that does not exist, okay? I invented the Pentadontosaurus 30 years ago. It should mean a lizard with 5 teeth, okay? But it doesn't exist. In fact, the Gasosaurus does exist, and it was called the Gasosaurus because a Chinese gas company was building a new central gas station, and when they built the station, they found the remains of a unique dinosaur, which they then called the Gasosaurus. Okay, so in fact, the Gasosaurus exists, but the Pentadontosaurus doesn't exist. This is another page from my very first book from 30 years ago, and it was The Curse of Pharaoh Dinkum. And Pharaoh Dinkum never existed, okay? I think many of you knew that the pharaoh was Neferefre. Pharaoh Dinkum was a joke. If any of you are familiar with Australia, in Australian English, Australians often say fair dinkums to mean like fair enough, okay? It's okay, it's fair. And so it was a joke, okay? But it sounds like it could be true, okay? Pharaoh Dinkum. So we fooled a lot of people with that. And if you look here, this is another comic story from 30 years ago. And you can see that one of the cartoon boxes there says, this man has a rare illness called mosquitosis. Now, I believe, you can tell me in the chat box if I'm right or if I'm wrong, In Spanish, mosca is fly. Is it the same in Spanish? Is it the same in Italian? Is mosca the word for fly? Can you just help me and tell me if it's a yes or a no? Mosca. Well, I can't see the chat box moving at the moment, but maybe that's me. Mosca. Okay. Yes, it is. Okay. Thank you very much. So again, I invented the name of this illness, and I thought it was quite funny. And once I visited a school to be interviewed by the students, and the first question, the question that they all really wanted to ask me is, does mosquitosis really exist? Now, I thought that was quite funny, but now I kind of think that in our books, we want real world content. Okay, we want to be talking about things that exist in the real world. And I think that maybe in my book, which I am very proud of from 30 years ago, I think it was a little bit confusing because we had some things that were completely true and some things which were invented. And I would like to ask you in the chat box, why do you think we are so interested today in 2022? Why are we so interested in real world content? Right, Maria Teresa has said immediately, we have enough fake news. That is, I agree with you totally. And in fact, I don't know if you came to my webinar for Italy last year, because in fact, I talked all about critical reading and critical thinking. And I think that Maria Teresa has put her finger on exactly the fact here, is that we need to have real world content. One reason for this is that I think that we have a big emphasis on critical thinking and critical reading. And as Maria Teresa has said, we have enough fake news. And so I think that if in our course books and if in our material, we need to distinguish real from fake. Fake can be fun. And I do believe that fiction has a very strong part in the development of all of our students. But I think that we need to concentrate in our books on what is real and getting that idea of distinguishing real facts from fake facts. One thing that I would like to say before I continue is that I'm going to touch on 10 different trending topics today. And so each of these areas we could investigate in real depth, but I haven't got time today. But if you go to Macmillan Education, ELT, and if you look at their webinar archive and also the Mondadori archive, you will find many webinars. I think I've done a webinar on each of these topics. So if you want to investigate them in more detail, like I said, last year for Italy, I gave a specific webinar dealing with this area in detail. Okay, so trending topic number 1 was real world content. Trending topic number 2, I think, is the idea of the importance of critical thinking and critical reading today. Another reason I think why real world content is so important is the recent emphasis on CLIL and on EMI. Now, I think in English language teaching, we have too many acronyms like CLIL and EMI, and I get confused myself. But I've written it down on the slide. CLIL is Content and Language Integrated Learning, and EMI is English as a Medium of Instruction. What do they mean? They mean that we are teaching something through English. So, for example, we are teaching history using English. We're teaching music, physical education, and English is the medium that we are using to explain the subject. Now, I live just outside Madrid, and I think Madrid, Spain, has been one of the pioneering areas where many subjects at school are taught in English. It's actually a little bit controversial sometimes. Some people complain because it means that if you teach history in English, then you're going to teach less history. And I think that that's actually, I think it's difficult to argue that that is not the case. We have to then decide what is more important, teaching more history, teaching English, and personally, I don't know the answer. What I do know is that I think that teaching real world content in English can be really motivating, and it can also be preparing our students for studying, for example, at university. And for example, this is a text from Gateway to the World, B1+, and it's all about the topic of fast fashion. Okay, and this text, which is impossible to read unless you have absolutely amazing eyesight, it's all about the question of fast fashion. So it's real world content, and our teenage students can learn something about the world. I'm going to read out some facts which appear in that text, okay? And it's going to be difficult. It's impossible for you to read it, but there are some amazing facts. One fact is that we buy 60% more clothes than 15 years ago, okay? 60% more clothes. One other fact is that 11% of the world's poisonous pesticides are used to help make cotton. And I think a really interesting fact is that most people on average wear their new clothes 7 times and then they throw them away. So those are pretty amazing facts. And I do believe that it can be very motivating for our teenage students to be reading about these facts in English. We're doing 2 things at the same time. We're practicing our English, and we are also getting our students learning about the world. So I think we're really doing sort of 2 things at the same time. And I think that's a great use of our time, as opposed to, for example, the invented things that I started off my session talking about. Yeah, Maria Teresa, I agree. 7 times is ridiculous. And Daniela, yeah, I do agree. So I'm not sure what part you're saying is not entirely true. What I was saying is that some people argue that if you're teaching geography in English, you might teach, for example, less geography than if you taught it in Italian. But in my opinion, in terms of motivation, teaching a subject in English is incredibly motivating. So probably, I hope we do agree about that. So trending topics, we've talked about then the idea of real world content. We've talked about the idea of critical thinking and critical reading. And then we've also talked about this idea of using English to teach a particular subject. And Sophia, that is really interesting. I would teach first aid in English because that's exactly what I did in Gateway 2nd edition. So I guess yes, Gianna, I hope we do agree. But anyway, if we don't agree, that's okay, because that happens in real life. And also do remember, please, that the last 5-10 minutes of this session, we are going to have a question and answer session, and you can bring up any questions or points that you like. Now, another trending topic, which is connected with this point about fast fashion, is something that we are all talking about at the moment, which is sustainability and global citizenship. And I would just like to apologize, because 5 minutes before I began this session, I realized that there is a spelling mistake with sustainability. Well, it's not. I know how to spell sustainability, but it was a mistake. Again, I'm only human. I'm missing the I in sustain. Okay, I'm sorry about that, and I will change it as soon as I can. But I think that a real trending topic, something that everybody in English language teaching is talking about right now, is sustainability and global citizenship. And I do know for a fact that in Italy, you were talking about sustainability in English language teaching before we were here in Spain. And I think that these sustainable development goals are all really powerful for our English language classes, because they are they're giving us real world content which is incredibly relevant to our students, which are really important for their lives. And again, I think all of the points that I've made so far are connected, they're interconnected. The idea of motivation through real world content links then with the idea of the sustainable development goals, which are incredibly relevant subjects for our students. And as Daniela says, yes, I agree. I think they're interesting and up to date. Nothing could be more up to date. So I just have a few ideas for us to think about in terms of, for example, global citizenship and sustainability. I believe that these are things that they're not simply to teach, for example, once a month or once a term. I think that these sustainable development goals are things that we can integrate in our day-to-day teaching. I don't think that they are the only things that we should be talking about, but I do think that they are important, relevant topics that should be appearing not simply as a reading text, but also, for example, in terms of listening, in terms of videos, in terms of grammar exercises, in terms of vocabulary. In other words, my feeling is that sustainability, global citizenship is something that we need to mix into our weekly teaching. And I also believe that nowadays we need to try and find original ways to get students interested in these topics. If we simply talk about plastic bags are a bad thing, I think that that is no longer interesting, because people are talking about that all the time. So I think we need to think about more original ways of including these topics. And I've got a question for you. In the chat box, you might like to answer this question. What happens to fruit that looks ugly? What happens to fruit that is not the right shape or the right size for supermarkets? So the fruit is perfect, but what happens to it? So, you know, these big supermarkets, they see the fruit and it's not exactly right, or it's got a slight mark, or there's something that it doesn't look perfect. Right, Suzanne, thank you. You've said that they're thrown out, right? Pierre Paolo, you said it's half price. And Gisela, you also mentioned that it is thrown away. Well, here is a really interesting text about a young girl who came from Lithuania. She studied in the UK. And when she left school and went to university, she decided that she needed to do something about this. There is an amazing statistic there. And literally, this statistic is so amazing that myself and my editors, we had to check it 5 times with the BBC to see if it's true. But it talks about millions of apples are thrown away every day in the UK because they are not perfect. And this Lithuanian girl who went to live in the UK, she had a brilliant idea, which was to make fruit juice from the imperfect fruit. And I love the name of this product. It's called Flawsome, okay, which is a great word, right? So instead of awesome, we have Flawsome. It's not perfect, but it's perfect for making juice. And every single bottle of juice tells you how many apples you have saved from being thrown away. So meanwhile, this exercise, which is from Gateway to the World B2, this exercise is also practicing use of English. You know, the typical first for schools exercise where the students have to decide which word is missing. So what we're doing is lots of things at the same time. We are practicing English, and at the end of the day, we are English teachers. And I think that's important and obvious to remember. But we're teaching English. We're also looking at sustainability, and we're also looking at it in an original way, I think. Now, another idea, and again, in the chat box, you can tell me if you know what this word means. Does anybody know what plogging is? Can you just tell me? Yes, no, no idea. Plogging. Do we know what it means? I'm sure somebody does. How many people know what it means? Plogging. Oh, at the moment, there's no reaction, but I'm sure it's coming. It's a compound. Lucia, you are totally correct. Katerina, Lilia, Ariana, Alessandra, no idea. Okay, well, again, this is really good then, because this is, again, the moment where I can teach you something, and we're using English to do it. And you can do the same with your students. Somebody's got exactly the right answer, Alessia. Thank you very much. It's jogging and picking up litter. Okay, yeah, sport and the environment. So again, this is just an interesting text, I think, for our students, because they're learning something about the world. They're learning something about the environment. And I think they're also learning a very positive value, something that is very useful in terms of citizenship, in terms of helping our local environment. And again, that's what sustainability is about. But we're trying to make it interesting. What we're doing is we're having a listening exercise. Gateway to the World B1. We've got a listening about plogging. We explain what it is, which is basically going to run or jog or even walk, and at the same time, picking up litter in our neighborhood. So we're getting exercise, as somebody has mentioned. Yeah, Maria Teresa as well, thank you. You're doing exercise, but at the same time, you are helping your local environment, which hopefully is also helping the global environment. And by the way, yeah, picking up litter, it's called plogging because, as somebody has mentioned already, it comes from the Swedish, which I think is plock up. Which means pick up. And so it's a combination of picking up in Swedish and jogging in English. Yeah, so we've got plogging. Again, my point would be that we're teaching something in English, we're integrating it into our day-to-day, week-by-week teaching of English. We're learning something as well as English, and what we're learning is also helping to create a better world. So I think that integration is the name of the game. We're mixing things together to do more than one thing at the same time. Now, the idea of plogging also brings up the idea of collaboration. And the idea of collaboration, I don't know if any of you were with me on Monday. On Monday, I gave 3 talks for the Macmillan Education Global Teachers Festival, and I spent 50 minutes talking about the topic of collaboration. And if you would like to see that video, if you go to Macmillan Education videos, you can see me talking about this topic in detail. I think, again, that collaboration is a hot topic at the moment because we need people to work together to solve these problems. Now, I think that we would expect our students to collaborate and to work well together, but it's not always happening. And I think sometimes we need to encourage our students to collaborate by giving them suggestions, by giving them tips about how you can work well in a team or in a group. So, for example, here's one little suggestion. When you work in a team, it's important to respect and respond positively to other people's ideas. So if you imagine we're working together on a project and somebody has an idea, then I think you would agree it's important to respect that idea and respond positively to it. Now, I think it's useful to give these tips to our students, but we also need to give them the language to do that. Can anybody think of a useful expression in English that would be good to respond positively to somebody's ideas? So I suggest an idea. What would you say to me to make me feel good about my idea? Well, Sophia, I agree with you, definitely. We need to set an example. And I believe very strongly that teachers need to be a role model, right? So luckily, most teachers, I think we do collaborate and work well in groups. Can anybody think of a useful expression to respond positively to somebody else's suggestion or idea? Just let me, what a great idea. Thank you, Paula. Thank you very much. Maria Teresa, that's a good idea. I see. I'm not sure if I see was the before or after. Brilliant. Thank you, Pier Paolo. This is a good point. Exactly. Okay. So I'm suggesting two things here. Thank you, Fulvia. Yes, exactly. So I've got good idea. That's a good point. I like that idea. That's nice. And maybe we could also, so I think that's useful, isn't it? Because it's very tactful to say that you think it's a good idea, but that also you're adding a new idea. Alessandra, that is a brilliant idea too. Maria Violeta, maybe Mary Violet. These are all great suggestions. And my two tips are, first of all, we need to help students to remind them about the power of collaboration. And secondly, we also need to give them the English functional language so that they can do that and so that they can work together. So basically, collaboration, something that we need in the classroom, definitely, and something that we want our students to do, but they don't always do it. So we need to suggest ways of doing it and also give them the language to do it. And this idea of collaboration in the classroom, I think, can lead to a bigger, broader picture, which is collaboration on a huge global scale. We've talked already about sustainable development goals, but what about helping our students linguistically to share ideas, to share work, to share information about their country with students from other countries? And this today is a real trending topic that we call intercultural competence. And intercultural competence is the idea that we are helping our students to be able to collaborate and communicate with students from other countries. And here's an example, okay? The students, imagine that the students are preparing a project and they're preparing to give a project to present their work to people from another country. And in this box, it says, think about any elements in your presentation that would be new or unusual for somebody not from your country. Check also for any words or expressions in your language that you think are difficult to translate. Then decide how to explain those elements, words, and expressions. Now, I want to give you the example. I teach in Spain, okay? So I'm in the classroom every day with teenage students. Sometimes the idea of a fiesta comes up. Now, fiesta is a very Spanish word. I'm not sure what the closest equivalent in Italian is, if you say exactly fiesta. I think English people think of a fiesta as like a party. And if you look at a dictionary, often it will say fiesta in Spanish means party in English. But it means something different, really, because a fiesta is often like a local celebration, maybe an annual celebration that you do So, for example, in Valencia in February, they burn big wooden statues, and that is their fiesta. Now, I think that there's no one single way to translate that concept into English. And I think this often happens in languages. I'm sure in Italian, there are lots of concepts that they don't really have an automatic translation. Actually, the word kettle in English often doesn't have such a great translation into other languages. And what we're trying to do here is to get students thinking about, okay, if it's a concept which is unique to your country, to your culture, how could you express that idea in English? How can you express it in a way that could be understood by people who are not Spanish or who are not Italian? And so what we're doing in this section of Gateway to the World is getting students to think about this intercultural space. And this is very much linked to another collaborative element that we have in Gateway to the World, which is our collaborative projects. And these are getting students to think about differences and similarities between our country and other countries around the world. So here we're looking, for example, at school food in Australia and thinking about how similar school food is in Italy, in Spain, in Russia. How is it similar? How is it different? Why is it similar? And why is it different? And this leads us to, I think, a really interesting feature that I think you're going to be excited about if you use Gateway to the World. We have this thing, and I'd like you to investigate it if you can. If you go to macmillanenglish.com, virtual classroom exchange, you will see that what we're doing is very similar, Manuela, to eTwinning. We are getting our students to share their projects. So they work on a project about school food in Italy. There is this very simple way that you can see there with the red box, which says register my class. You simply put the level of your students, you put the country that you're working in, and you put the age of your students, and you are automatically linked to another class of teenagers who is working on the same project. And what the students are doing then is this idea of collaboration on a really completely global scale. The students are going to be able to talk about school food in Italy, and they're going to be able to listen to a class in Russia, Ukraine, Mexico, Peru, Slovakia, Serbia, and they're going to find out about school food in that country. And of course, the great thing about this is that English suddenly stops being only a school subject. Suddenly, the idea is that English is much more than a school subject. The idea is that English becomes a life skill. And, I think one of the big problems of teaching is that when you're teaching in your classroom, people, of course, can always use their L1. But once suddenly your students are communicating with teenagers from another country, their L1 is no longer a possibility. So even if the preparation is done in L1, there is a moment when the students need to use English to communicate. And I think that's a really powerful message that our teenage students can learn. And all of this brings me to my next trending topic, number 7, which is that English is a life skill. It's allowing communication. Like I say, English is not just something that we study at school. It's something that we study at school so that outside school, we can do many, many, many things. And I think that's been one of the biggest changes in English language teaching over the last 5-10 years. English is a vehicle. Again, we talked about English as a medium of instruction and talked about real world content. I think that English is just a perfect vehicle for teaching teenage students life skills that will help them in their lives outside the classroom and after school has finished. And as I like to put it there, we are preparing our students for the tests of life. Now, I think that this trending topic has become popular because there is a feeling, I think, that school is not really always, or at least in the past, I'm going to say in the past, because I'm not sure if I believe that today we don't prepare our students. I think we do prepare our students today, but this is still quite recent. 2016, 2017, if you look where the photograph is, millennials aren't ready for the reality of college life and can't manage time or money, research reveals. So I think that we've started to teach life skills much more in the secondary classroom because there is a feeling that we, or education, is not always preparing students for the realities of life in work or even at university. You notice there that it talks about managing time or money. Now, this is something that we did in Gateway 2nd edition. I'm sorry, somebody is ringing my doorbell. You can probably hear it. It's probably Jeff Bezos from Mr. Amazon calling me, but I can't answer, okay? In 2nd edition of Gateway and in the new edition of Gateway, we help students with the whole concept of time management. How can they manage their time effectively? How can they have time to do their homework, to do revision, but also to do sport and also to relax? And I think this is a really interesting concept. Again, the idea is we're teaching the students about these concepts and we're teaching them in English. Now, in Gateway to the World, we're lucky because we have some really great videos which are from national television, from the biggest British broadcasting company. And one of these videos is one of my favorites, is called Please Take My Phone, Teacher. In the chat box, what do you think you're going to see in this video? What could it be about? What could it be about? Why would you say to your teacher, please take my phone? Can you just guess? Why would you want your teacher to take your phone? Addiction, mobile addiction. Thank you, Gianinotto. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. I'm doing the best I can. Not to disturb the lesson. They don't want to be distracted. Okay, right. I'm going to show you a video now. Ricardo, in 2 seconds, I'm going to ask you to share my video. Let's watch.
Today, there are teenagers who spend more time on their smartphones than connecting with the real world around them. Some parents worry about this, and so do some teachers.
Different schools in London have different policies when it comes to their pupils and their mobile phones. Some insist that they're turned off during class time, others ban them from the school grounds, but this school have taken it one step further.
Here at Michaela Community School in Wembley, London, some of the students have agreed to leave their smartphones with the school for 6 months. They don't have to, but they want to.
It's also allowed me to get better quality sleep and spend more time with my family because I'm not constantly worried about putting up this perfect image online on the internet.
When you get likes, it will give you a notification. And when you hear that, you will start reflecting on that rather than reflecting on your homework.
The school offers students basic phones at special prices. The main objective is to encourage students to experience life without 24/7 internet.
We sell these phones at school for £10. We buy them for 14, we sell them subsidised for £10. And the reason is because parents love the convenience. They don't want their child to give up their phone completely because they want to be able to get in touch with their child.
So parents can still text their child or ring them with this phone, but that's all. Students say that they're happier because they don't have to worry about the different pressures of social media. And the school is offering classes to parents too, to encourage families to try living without the internet.
It's giving those children an experience of not having their phones at their side all the time.
He says that without their phones, teenagers can feel bored and frustrated at first. But they can learn to live without the internet and find different things to do. When they get their phones back, they should now be able to use the internet with moderation. The students who've tried the scheme say that it has definitely made their lives better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Claudia, I agree. It is an amazing experiment. Now, personally, in my school where I teach in Spain, I don't think that could ever happen. But I think it's really interesting to see this experiment in the UK. I don't think it's very common in the UK either. But I think it's great as a point of discussion. To get students to talk about what they think about this project. Maybe they would do it, maybe they wouldn't do it, probably they wouldn't do it, but it's still good to open a discussion about, as many of you have said, the word addiction. And of course, mobile phones can really affect how much time students spend on their work. And I think even as adults, I think you'd probably agree. I think most adults, including myself, I think we're all addicted to our phones. We look at them like hundreds of times a day. So I think this is a useful discussion to have. And again, critical thinking. We can think of good things, bad things, but I think it's good to advance a discussion about this question. So time management. Really important, I think, in terms of school life. And that brings me to my trending topic number 8. Students often don't have time to do anything because they have so many exams. Would you, I imagine in Italy it's the same. How important are exams in the life of your teenage students? Are exams very important, a little bit important, not important? How important would you say exams in your school? Right, Carla, that's a good rule, I think. I wish that happened in my school. Tiziana, that's a very interesting idea about trying that experiment in 1 week, for example, see what happens. Right, so you're answering my question that exams are very important. I think that exams in the last 10, 20 years, exams are more and more important. Yes, so we've got state exams, we've got external exams, we've got Cambridge, we've got Trinity, we've got TOEFL, we've got hundreds of exams. Now, I watch many webinars about exams in conferences, and many people today are very critical of exams, and they're often complaining about exams. But personally, I think that we need to be very pragmatic and positive towards exams. Exams are part of a student's life. All of our students need to pass exams in order to get to university, in order to get a job. Life is competitive whether we like it or not. And I don't think that exams should be the only thing we teach, but I do think that we need to teach in a very direct way. In the new Gateway to the World workbook, there's a very, very helpful section called the Exam Trainer, right, in Valsi, right? So that's, yeah, like an official exam, right? Very, very important. I think that we need to accept that exams are important and try to prepare them as best as we can. We need to explain what appears in the exam. We need to help students to understand how they are evaluated. We need to give our students good tips, and we need to give them exam practice. So sometimes I think that we tend to be very negative about exams, but exams are a fact of life. Yeah, and I agree with Pier Paolo. They are. I mean, you know, whether we like it or not, as I say, I don't think we should waste our time too much complaining about exams because our students need them. And if our students need them, our job as English teachers is to prepare them as best as we can. Of course, at the same time, I do believe that we need to make sure that we don't become exam obsessed. We need to make sure, I think that exams can be sometimes a little bit boring. I think we need to make sure that we combine good exam preparation, but with very interesting texts, and also that we need to prepare students with very solid life skills too. And the other thing that I think is really important is that many exams, they are not just a question of English, they are also a question, I think, of ideas. They are things that, that we need to get the students coming up with good ideas in their tests. By the way, I do agree that with Daniela, of course, that exams are important, but like there are many ways to measure success, and exams are not the only measure of success. And of course, we need to build up our students' confidence and self-esteem. Now, here's an exam. This is an English exam, and I'm not actually sure if it's possibly from Italy. I no longer remember if I found this in Italy or if I found this in Switzerland. But we've got some essay topics. In fact, maybe you can tell me if it's Italy or not Italy. But we've got exam essays here. Look at number 3, hope. What meaning can hope have in our lives? Good clothes open all doors. Now, these topics, I think that to answer these questions well, we don't just need good English, we need to have lots of good ideas. And that brings me to my 9th and penultimate thinking topic, which is thinking skills. And this is something which was inspired by the Harvard Graduate School of Education, something called visible thinking routines. And these are simple thinking routines that can encourage our students to come up with ideas, to generate ideas. And this is one example, okay? It's called Think, Puzzle, Explore. And I suggest you do this with any topic, any text. You can use this thinking routine. It says, you are going to read a short text about ethical shopping. Before you read, follow these instructions. What do you think you know about the topic? What questions or puzzles do you have about the topic? And now explore the text or explore the internet to find the answers to your questions or puzzles. So this is a very simple thinking routine, and I think it's just a good way to get students to come up with new ideas. And now here we've got our text again about ethical shopping. This is often called fair trade shopping. And again, all of these topics are reflecting this interest in sustainability. Here, the idea is upcycling. I don't know if you know the word upcycling. So instead of recycling, you are not only using the product again, but you're actually making it better. And this is going to bring me now to my last trending topic. Does anybody know what eco-anxiety is? It's a new word. It's very recent. It's only existed in the last year or 2 years. What is eco-anxiety and who suffers from it the most? Any ideas? Well, I'm going to show you my next slide, which gives you the answer from FOMO, which is fear of missing out, to eco-anxiety. Teens need your help. And basically, yes, Gianluca, exactly. Eco-anxiety is worrying about the environment, and apparently teenagers are the ones who suffer from it the most. And my very last trending topic today, I think you will have seen that they're all interconnected, okay? But I think that if our teenagers are suffering from eco-anxiety, what we need to do is to help them in terms of well-being. And I think this is maybe one of the most important trending topics in our world of teaching teenagers today: social and emotional learning. I think we need to really help after the pandemic, after the last 2 years. I think we will find that many teenage students are suffering more from different types of anxiety, not only eco-anxiety. And I think the word there, inclusion, I think the whole idea of helping students, not just with their English, not just with knowing more about the world, not just with thinking skills, but the idea is also helping them on an emotional level, on the level of feelings, on the level of building self-esteem, which many of you have mentioned in context with exams. I think these are all things that we're going to have to spend our time doing a lot more in the future. I'm not sure if you would agree with me. So my last point, again, if you get a chance to look at the teacher's book for Gateway to the World, we have an incredible amount of detail there, which is helping teachers to help students deal with different problems. Thinking about the question of gender equality, thinking about the question of self-esteem, of confidence, thinking about mixed language level classes, thinking about diversity in general, thinking about how we can help our students to deal with all of the problems that today our teenage students are facing. I'm going to share with you my last slide. I'm going to jump ahead. This is a summary of what we've looked at today. And I don't know if we've got, Casimir, maybe we've got just like 5 minutes for a few minutes for any questions that people might have.
Yep. Okay. So thanks, David. That was really interesting. We do have about 2 or 3 minutes. So if there's anyone that wants to ask something, now's your chance.
Mindfulness, of course, is very powerful. Yeah. And I think, again, we're going to spend more and more time talking about topics like mindfulness because of this need that our students have, as I say, on this social and emotional level, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I think, like you were saying, it was something interesting. Italy really did get off the blocks quickly with sustainability and 21st century skills. You said more so than in Spain. I would imagine that it's pretty much the same now because the content you're putting into the book is quite relevant to Italy. And
that's right. That's right. I think that we were just a little bit behind originally, but now, yeah. I mean, if you flick through, obviously, Gateway to the World, you're going to find, as I say, the important thing is that it's all integrated. Some people think that, it's like they teach English and then suddenly, like once a year, once a month, once a term, they teach they teach sustainability. But I think that the best thing to do really is to integrate it throughout your teaching. And as I said before, getting vocabulary exercises can be bringing up these topics and getting students to think about them. So I think they need to be continual, I think, through our teaching. Danielle has asked about the e-twinning that's similar. Yeah. So if you go, I don't know if we can share a link, that might be difficult, but otherwise, if you go to Macmillan Education Virtual Classroom Exchange, okay, Daniela, Virtual Classroom Exchange, and you'll immediately find the information, and it's incredibly easy to set that up with your class so that they can connect with another school, doing the same project. So Virtual Classroom Exchange, those are the keywords. Macmillan Virtual Classroom Exchange.
Here's a question from Chiara about using the L1 if a topic starts to get a bit complicated.
That is a really good question, Chiara. And I think that it's trying to find a balance. I think your question sort of gives the answer. You're trying to find a balance. We are English teachers. We want them to be using English as much as possible. But like you say, if the conversation suddenly gets very deep because the students are so motivated to talk about a really deep subject, I personally don't mind if they suddenly have a little bit of L1. I think we need to be a little bit flexible. You know, in the past, we often talked about, you know, that the students should never use L1. I think we have to be pragmatic. And when we're talking about an interesting topic and the students have got the ideas, you know, we need to be flexible. Obviously, what we can do is find out what they need to be able to discuss the subject better and add on that language in a future lesson. One thing that's great about the project is that even if they use a little bit of L1 in the project, as I said before, in the classroom, when they come to explain that to somebody else, they're going to have to transform it into L1 because the students in wherever, in Serbia or Mexico or Russia, won't know Italian. So they're going to have to transform it at one moment. But I do believe, I think it was a really good question. I think we need to be a little bit flexible.
Yeah, that's my feeling too. You know, you need to see what you're facing. So I think that's about all the time we've got. And I don't see any other questions at the moment. So I think it's safe to say goodbye to everyone. And
if anybody does, if anybody does have any extra questions or comments, then you can connect with me at Facebook Teach with Dave or Facebook Gateway Teach with Dave. And we can definitely stay in touch and I will answer any questions you might have.
Great stuff. Thank you, David. And thanks, everybody. I'll see you at the next session. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all the participation in the chat box, everybody, and have a great evening.